I would argue that the CX-90 is the brand's best SUV ever, and it better be for the price. Today I'm going to go over what makes it great, some of its shortcomings, along with one crucial flaw that it might not be able to escape. The CX-90 replaces the CX-9, an SUV that never particularly sold well, but actually had its best year ever just as they killed it off. The CX-90 is a huge departure from that in a lot of ways, but they do share some priorities with one another, and a lot of that is something you will find on the interior. One of the things that makes this a standout in the three-row segment. This has excellent quality. Everything that you touch feels solid. The panel gaps are very small, and you'll have soft materials for your limbs and joints. The soft touch continues up to the dash. Other materials are more on par with the price, but I like how little glossy plastic is in here. I think it should age very well. And if you want a dealership experience that won't make you age 5 years, check out Royal South Mazda in Bloomington, Indiana. The small, friendly, community-focused store that has let me test drive a couple CX-90s to make this video possible. You also have a layout that looks expensive and utilizes physical controls. We have various types of buttons, a few dials, including the one that controls the infotainment system. Something that can be a little polarizing, but in a car like this that really prioritizes driving, this is easier to use while you're in motion. It's oversimplified, so some things take a couple extra steps, but you don't have to move a hand at all. And it does offer wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but only if you skip the bottom two trims. On all, you will have push button start with proximity entry, leather upholstery, rain sensing wipers, and a surprisingly crisp and punchy 8-speaker audio system. You'll get things like a head-up display and wireless charger on most of them, and that list of amenities can grow quite a bit, just like the price. But before I talk about that, I also think that the seats in here are worthy of praise. They're firm yet pretty supportive and well shaped. There's also standard lumbar adjustment for the driver, so that a wide variety of people can be happy in this thing. And while not as spacious as some of the lower end competitors, it is easy to work with what you have in the CX-90. The cargo area is also long, the seats fold flat, but the space is down on volume against many of its cheaper rivals. Passenger room is slightly better. I'm 6'3" and I can fit behind myself in the second row comfortably, and if I reallocate some space, I would be okay with short trips in the third row. If you're looking for something excessive, this ain't it. However, if you're comparing this to things like the Audi Q7, Acura MDX, Volvo XC90, this is practical, and it's a lot cheaper. So actually, I think I'm going to make value the second reason to pick one of these things up. So this does start at just over 40 grand, which is fairly competitive considering it still has standard all-wheel drive. But that's only theoretical. Currently, a select trim is as rare as emotionally stable K-pop listeners. If you start to lay on the options, you get the Turbo S model, which I'll talk about here soon, then we can actually pop over $60,000. Still, a lot of the high-end competitors start things out there. And this also carries an engine worthy of a BMW or Mercedes badge. Just hopefully a little bit cheaper to maintain in the long run. But it's a 3.3 liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder. It makes 280 horsepower in this base version, but you can get the Turbo S that makes 340. Both of those have boatloads of torque. You also have a new plug-in hybrid available, which does have a sort of disappointing in-town range, but you can theoretically get one of those for under 50 grand, which is a steal considering the plug-in hybrid Mitsubishi Outlander I drove not that long ago was 50 grand. Plus it still packs plenty of power. But back to the turbo inline 6, this base engine is paired up with an 8-speed wet clutch automatic, not a torque converter. Sometimes off the line, it's a little hesitant and not as smooth as what a traditional automatic transmission may be, but once you get rolling, it's smooth and reactive. Mazda said they took this approach because it provides more direct shifts. It does feel natural. I'm more in love with the engine's power band. It doesn't need to rev very high at all to give you adequate passing power. 0 to 60, I mean, it's gonna come up in like the high 6s. I got 6.9 seconds with a pretty mild launch. but I'm more so happy with how relaxed it is. It is also a mild hybrid, so it has a smooth auto stop start, and it does get pretty good gas mileage considering the performance and the size. This powertrain is not just about straight line prowess, it's also there to help with the handling, which is a distinct pro to the CX-90. So this uses a longitudinally mounted engine that's placed further back to better help with balance, and it also has a rear-biased all-wheel drive system thanks to that engine configuration, further improving its dynamics. This feels substantial, with well-weighted steering that's admittedly heavy around a parking lot. There's also no vagueness on center, and it has a tight turning circle. The steering rack itself may be kind of slow, but there is a little bit of feedback pumped through. It's one of the most engaging SUVs on a twisty road, and the body roll is also well kept for this large of a vehicle, and it also forgoes adaptive suspension, which would likely assist with its goal of being entertaining and comfortable, but it finds a nice middle ground without added complication down the road. It's also composed and comfortable over some broken pavement, but go through the real nightmarish kind of stuff, and some of the softer competition will have an advantage when it comes to forgiveness. Now, if you're going from back road to no road, this has an adequate 8 inches of ground clearance, but a competent all-wheel drive system that, from what I've seen, is good at shifting power side to side through its standard off-road mode. It does that using the brakes. There's no proper torque vectoring differential in here, like what you would get with the Honda Pilot or Acura MDX. Take note, this is better for inclement weather than it is for obstacles. The long wheelbase and angles are a big limitation. Now, the last reason that I would pick up the CX-90 is more of a combination of everything, and that is its upscale factor. So we'll reiterate a few things. It has a silky turbocharged inline 6-cylinder, a drivetrain with a rear bias, luxury competitive build quality at a price that easily overlaps with most of its mainstream competition, and it has extreme on-road confidence. It feels like a vehicle I could trust with my life and my deepest secrets. And while I can't make this a reason to buy the CX-90, I think it's also worth mentioning, especially when comparing it to a Mercedes, Audi, or BMW, this should be more reliable. Obviously, it's all new, so I can't report the common issues like I normally would, but while talking about running costs, you can use regular fuel in any one of these, though the plug-in hybrid and the Turbo S recommend premium. It seems like they've poured a ton of money into this, though there are some flaws. Now, some of these downsides may be pros to you, like the taut suspension that is a touch firm over some horrible roads. There's also the steering that is heavy at low speeds, the wet clutch transmission that's a bit sleepy around takeoff, and the lack of a highway speed lane centering system on the inline 6 models. The cargo capacity across the board is going to be more tight on average than its key non-luxury focused competition. This is subjective, but I think it looks oddly bulbous from some angles. The interior has a very thick console that, if you're wider than myself, you may find troublesome, and it makes it feel more cramped. The third row, again, just okay. Additionally, interior storage is lacking for a family-oriented SUV. If I'm honest, people that buy 3-row rides tend to pick SUVs and minivans that easily outpace their bare necessities, especially when it comes to practicality. They usually want soft rides too, something like you get with the Highlander or the new Grand Highlander, which amps up the luxury and the size of the regular one. But the CX-90 takes a different approach to an upscale bloated crossover. It would almost seem insulting to describe it as an alternative to a luxury SUV because it really deserves the title itself, and it does that at a much lower price with presumably much less running costs and more practicality when you're comparing it to those sorts of models. The potentially fatal flaw that I described in the beginning has nothing to do with the SUV itself. It's just this. I can't really wrap my head around people who are usually buying $60,000, $70,000 luxury SUVs going with the Mazda. Value isn't on their mind to begin with. This is more so for the person with the budget of a Subaru Ascent or Honda Pilot that wants a Swedish or German luxury family barge. Hopefully, for Mazda's case here, that's a profitable niche. Let me put it this way. Samsung could make a phone that literally allows its users to levitate, and iPhone users would still say, "Does it have iMessage though?" Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like to help me take on the YouTube algorithm. If you want more, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Thank you to my loyal supporters over at Patreon, and I'll catch you in the next one.